quiet in the early morning.
I thought
Only the
time
faint
would
echo
keep
of
you
footsteps
safe,
and the scent of
but it
mothballs
only
mixed
kept
with
you
old
silent.
fabric, the signature fragrance of memory. In the Vietnam War exhibit,
gave it
behind the thick glass, is a faded uniform bearing the name Harrison. A young woman stands before the display case,
If she
her
ever
eyes
finds
fixed on
this,
every frayed
she will
seam.
understand.
Emily Harrison, history major, and granddaughter of that very soldier. In her hand is an unfinished old letter. If you find this, she whispers, "Grandpa, I've found it." From that
You made
moment,
it home.
Emily knows she must follow the story to its end.
He
The
found
reason
his
why
way
he
home.
once donated this uniform, then came back to reclaim it, and finally, sent it back again. Emily doesn't know why she stopped at that display case. Perhaps because of the name, Harrison. Too familiar, too personal amid thousands of others. She reads and rereads every word as if they might change if she looks long
I thought
enough.
time would keep
The
you
faded
safe,
uniform stands
but it
silent
only
behind the
kept you
glass,
silent.
but to her, it seems to gaze back. A part of the family
If
she's
she
never
ever
met,
finds this,
never understood.
she will understand.
And before we continue with the main content of the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Okay. Oh, and don't forget to comment below to let us know where you're watching us from.
You made
We
it
love
home.
hearing that. She remembers as a child, her father
found his
only
way
saying
home.
that Grandpa came back from Vietnam and never saying more. Old photos in a tin box, a few rusted playing cards, then silence. Every conversation about him ended mid-sentence, as if there was something that shouldn't be mentioned. And now, standing before the inscription, Sergeant Thomas J. Harrison, she feels that emptiness calling her name. On the description plaque, amid the neatly typed lines, there's a tiny ink smudge like handwriting, a thin, slanted stroke, half accidental, half like a symbol. Emily looks closely and shivers slightly. It's exactly the script she's seen in the letter. Her mother kept the T drawn out, then dipping down, just like here. It can't be mere coincidence. She heads to the museum's archives office, requesting to view the donation records. The archivist searches, shakes her head, says most old documents are digitized, but she can submit a request for access. Emily fills out the form, signs her name under academic research. Her hand trembles slightly as she types his birth year, 1945, date of death, left blank. She doesn't know exactly, only that he passed in Tennessee a few years ago. While waiting, she returns to the display case. An elderly security guard is dusting around it. He notices her, quietly says there was once an old man who stood right there, many years ago, silent for hours. The story flashes in Emily's mind like an old film reel. That man could have been her grandfather coming to meet himself again in the glass. When the records arrive via email, she opens them right on her phone. A PDF file, dated 1985. The first line reads, "I donate my uniform so others can remember for me." Below is the slanted signature Thomas J. Harrison. At the bottom, a note from the recipient. Anonymous, per donor's request. Emily reads and rereads, feeling her heart constrict. He wanted to be forgotten so badly he hid his own name. She wonders what could make a soldier carrying a lifetime of memories choose to leave it in this cold glass case. A fear, a wound, or a punishment. She doesn't know, but her intuition tells her the answer isn't in the records, it's somewhere in the erased years. Before leaving, she looks back one last time. Next to the nameplate, where the ink has faded, there's a loose thread, as if someone once touched it. Emily places her hand on the glass, a strange feeling rising in her chest like a thread between two generations just tightened. In her mind, only one thought remains. She must know why he left it, and why he once came back to reclaim it. That question follows her all the way home. It's no longer research, but a debt of blood. And she knows, no matter how far back through the past, through every lost fragment of memory, she will find the answer. All right, dear audience of mine, if you're watching and finding this story interesting, comment number 1 or comment, "I'm still here," to keep listening. Okay. The letter attached to the email doesn't fit any category. No title, just a faded old scan, yellowed edges, familiar slanted handwriting. Emily opens it, reading each line slowly, as if afraid to tear the past. The first line chokes her. I give this back not because I want to forget, but because I lack the courage to keep it. The words still seem to carry the writer's breath, trembling, suppressed. She reads and rereads until her hands shake. The second half of the letter is torn, only fragments left. No recipient, no closing. A break from time, or from some fear. She knows she can't stop here. She must find the original. She must know the rest of that sentence. The museum records note the recipient of the letter was Dr. Ellen Reeves. That name appears multiple times in internal documents. Emily sends an email, expecting little, but just hours later, she gets a reply. A short line. I remember him. If you're truly his granddaughter, come see me. She arrives at Reeves's office the next day. The meeting is brief, words measured, but in that woman's eyes lingers something like regret. Reeves recounts that year. Harrison brought the uniform in silence. He didn't want his name shown, just left the letter and an empty envelope. No one knew what was in the envelope, only that he requested it be opened after everything is forgotten. Reeves never opened it, just kept it. Now, it's in the museum's old storage. Emily asks to see it. Reeves hesitates, then agrees. Inside the envelope, just a small scrap of paper, written in bolder script than usual. Some things we only understand when we're about to leave. No date, no signature. That short phrase stuns Emily, as if a message sent straight from the other side. She asks Reeves why this file was never published. Reeves says it wasn't exhibit material, just personal correspondence, and perhaps Harrison himself wanted it kept secret. Emily nods, but inside, a contrary feeling surges. If he wanted to forget, why write? If he wanted silence, why leave clues? The questions burrow deep, turning into an inexplicable urge. She begins retracing every trace in the 1985 donation catalog, following the signed names, the faint marginal notes. Amid hundreds of pages, another name appears, the one who confirmed receipt of the artifact, Carl Brewer. That name repeats in old family letters, in a few notes in the tin box her mother kept, Grandpa's last comrade in Vietnam. Suddenly, a thread connects the museum, the battlefield, and the small, forgotten house. Emily realizes she's standing between two layers of time, one of the lost soldier, one of the one trying to understand again. Each detail she uncovers is like dust falling on the surface of memory's lake, creating ever-widening ripples. Before leaving, Reeves hands her a copy of the last letter the museum received from Harrison, the one sent with the returned uniform. The italicized line at the end chokes her voice. Thank you for letting me say goodbye. Below it, a torn edge, as if someone cut off the ending. She holds the paper trembling, feeling like she's touching his hand through time. The torn letter, empty envelope, unfinished phrase, all like an invitation to step deeper into the story he started but never finished. Dear audience, pause for a moment to hit subscribe to the channel before watching the next part of the story, but only if you truly empathize with what I'm sharing here. And leave a comment below to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is now. It's fascinating to see everyone from everywhere joining us. Cedar Hill emerges in Emily's imagination as a hazy place off the map, a town time has perhaps forgotten. She doesn't know what awaits, just packs her backpack, the file folder, and a few of his old letters. It all starts from an address line Reeves found in storage, a P.O. box, no house number, no recipient. It seems Harrison wanted to cut himself off completely from the world, leaving his granddaughter a trace as fragile as breath. On the way, Emily rereads his letters many times. Amid the trembling lines, she senses the tearing apart, a sadness with no place to unload. He writes of rainy nights in the jungle, of a comrade's breath beside him then gone silent, of the feeling of surviving without knowing what's left of oneself. Those words aren't to recount the war, but to confess he never truly came back. Arriving in Cedar Hill, she tracks the last recipient in the records, Carl Brewer, who signed for receiving the uniform. After a few calls, a raspy male voice answers, slow and curt. He confirms he served with Harrison, his voice carrying age and unhealed memories. Emily only says she's the granddaughter. On the other end, he's silent a long time, then says one thing: "I still owe him a thank you." They agree to meet the next day. That night, she barely sleeps. In her mind, the scattered pieces of the story begin assembling. The old soldier returning to the museum, the torn letter, the unread note, and the comrade, now the final link. She wonders what Brewer will tell about her grandpa, the war, or what made him silent half his life. The meeting happens in the small room of the nursing home where Brewer lives. He's frail, but his eyes still sharp. He looks at her long before speaking. His voice is low and slow, as if each word drags a heavy memory. He says Harrison once carried him out of a 1,967 ambush amid gunfire and blinding smoke. He owes his life to that man, but for 50 years, they never met again. When he learned Harrison went to the museum, he sent a letter, but Harrison never replied. Emily sits silent, feeling something tighten in her chest. Brewer says Harrison didn't really want to give away the uniform, he just couldn't bear seeing it every day. He said, "If I can't forget, let others remember for me." That phrase echoes in Emily's mind, matching perfectly what Reeves once told. Before parting, Brewer rummages in a drawer and hands her a small wrapped item in an old cloth. Inside is a faded black and white photo of a young man in uniform holding a newborn baby. "That's you," he says, "and your grandfather, the day he came home on leave." Emily looks at the photo, feeling all time's distance dissolve. A moment so real she can almost hear his breath amid the blurred light streaks. Brewer tells her to take the photo back to the museum, place it beside the uniform, so those who come after know he once smiled. Emily nods, saying nothing more. As she leaves, she feels entrusted with a sacred task. The small photo in her hand grows heavy, not from the aged paper, but from the memories of two souls lying still within it. From the moment she sees the writing behind the photo, Emily knows her journey is no longer research, but a promise. She clearly feels the warmth of a man who once lived, loved, carried on his shoulders the weight of memories her whole family tried to forget. Each step she takes is like wading through a thick stream of memory, something time doesn't fade, only presses deeper, waiting for someone brave enough to touch it. She sits for hours in the town library, reading scattered notes about veterans from his unit. Amid hundreds of names, she finds small stories, fragmented tales of those who fell, and one name repeating many times: Thomas J. Harrison, the silent soldier who always carried a notebook, writing something each night after battle. No one knew what he wrote, but they all remembered. He always paused at the sound of gunfire, as if each noise embedded straight into his memory. Emily reads until the words blur together, leaving only one notion: memory doesn't die, it just waits for the next person to reclaim it. She realizes, because he carried that memory alone too long, when he couldn't bear it anymore, he gave it to the museum so it could live, be seen, be told, even in quiet ways. She aches, realizing he never truly wanted to give it away. He just wanted to unload the too heavy part in his heart. The next day, she returns to see Brewer. He sits silent, an old rusted tin box on the table. He pushes it toward her, says it's something Harrison once sent him but he never opened. He kept it out of fear. Now, he thinks he's old enough to face it. Inside the box is a torn cloth scrap from the uniform's sleeve, still bearing a faded bloodstain. Folded in the cloth is a small yellowed paper, short words: "If anyone asks, tell them I'm still finding my way back." The words take Emily's breath. Back, two simple words, but like a door opening to all he never said. She imagines her grandfather writing that line, a man who didn't want to die in war, but couldn't live as if it never happened. Coming back isn't retracing a path, but being seen, forgiven, understood. Brewer recounts the last news he got of Harrison was a letter from Washington. In it, He wrote he'd given the uniform back to the museum, that it was the only way he knew to keep those who fell alive. Brewer meant to visit but didn't make it. His old voice grows hoarse, weary, but his eyes bright and distant. He says, "Some carry war their whole lives, but not everyone gets the chance to set it down." Emily listens in silence, feeling each sentence awaken another layer of her own memory. She pities her grandfather, but also all like him survivors trapped between shores of forgetting and remembering. She holds the cloth again, feels the frayed threads, and understands this isn't just war's evidence, but a remnant of a man's soul who once loved life, believed in something, then lost that faith. Before leaving, Brewer looks at her long, then says slowly that Harrison once had an unfulfilled wish to hold his uniform again before dying. He did it, Brewer says, but more important, he gave it back. That's how he let go. Emily understands. The moment he took the uniform home, then sent it back, was when he ended his war. As she steps out of the nursing home, she feels a light wind blow through, carrying a peace she's never had. For the first time, she's not just seeking the past, but continuing it. In her mind, she hears her grandfather's voice low, raspy, but kind, saying some things are only understood after forgiving time. That night, she opens the photo again, places it beside the cloth and letter, then opens her laptop, writes the first lines for her essay. But the more she writes, the more she realizes it's no longer an essay, but a telling, a testament in words for those never heard. The email from Dr. Reeves arrives on a quiet evening, only the screen's light reflecting on Emily's face. The short words hold her gaze. "The museum wants to tell the full story. I think you need to come." She reads and rereads, feeling a thin thread in her heart vibrate, connecting past and present. She understands. This invitation isn't just for a history student, but for a granddaughter carrying memory's debt. Meeting Reeves again, she notices the once stiff woman now has something softer in her gaze. Reeves says after Emily left, she dug up all Harrison files, including the original torn letter. It was stored in unclassified papers, perhaps separated by an old staffer for restoration and never returned. Now, it's nearly fully restored, except a small, damaged end. Reeves says she wants Emily to read it before deciding anything. Emily takes the letter, breathes deep, then opens it, his handwriting clear, slightly slanted, steady but trembling at the end. He writes he tried living like a normal person, but each morning waking, he still hears helicopters in his head. He speaks of friends who fell, the guilt of surviving, nights staring at the uniform, unable to bear it, still smelling of earth and blood. Then he writes he wants to leave it for others, so they can see, remember, understand what freedom costs. His tone shifts lighter toward the end, as if talking to someone. "If one day you find this," he writes, "no, Grandpa never really left. He's just learning to come back." The last line torn across, only 2 faint words left. "Tell it." Emily reads to there and tears fall, spotting the old paper. She understands why that part was torn. Perhaps someone thought it too private, too personal for display. But that's what makes it more important than ever. He didn't just send memory to the museum, he sent it to the next generation, to her. Reeves sits quiet, says nothing. She hands Emily another file, internal minutes between the museum director and Harrison on the day he reclaimed the uniform. In it, Harrison signed for temporary artifact return, but instead of full name, just T. Harrison. Beside it, the director's handwritten note, "Returned for humanitarian reasons." Emily reads, and her heart tightens. He came back not to reclaim property, but to reclaim himself. And once found, he brought it back, to live where it belongs. She asks Reeves why everything was hidden so long. Reeves says, when Harrison died, the museum feared publicizing a personal story might make the exhibit seem biased, so they kept only neutral parts. But years passed, that silence became a gap needing fill. "Now," Reeves says, "time's long enough, we no longer fear memory." Emily understands. It's time she decides. Stay silent like he did, or speak so others know who he was. She chooses the latter, not to glorify, but to complete the story he started unfinished. She requests to use the letter and photo in the new exhibit, not as artifacts, but as a telling. Reeves nods, perhaps finding her own peace within. The following days, Emily spends all time at the museum, rereading every document, rearranging the narrative thread, writing the introduction for the new exhibit section. She doesn't write as a historian, but as one conversing with the departed. Each word she chooses carries his breath, simple, sincere, not heroic, but deeply human. When finished, she gives the draft to Reeves. The woman says nothing, just places a hand on her shoulder, then signs, approval. "Now, you've become the memory keeper," she whispers. Emily just nods, no reply. She knows that title needs no confirmation. It's granted by continuation from the one who lived to the one living, from private memory to shared. The night before the new exhibit opens, Emily sits alone before the case where the uniform still lies silent. Now, beside it will be the intact letter, the photo of the newborn in his arms, and a new plaque engraved with his last words. "If you find this, tell it." She closes her eyes, hears her heart blend with time's rhythm, feels like he's standing right behind, silent but present. In that moment, she understands. Memory is never a burden, it's proof. A person once lived, loved, left a mark on this world. Are you still here, dear audience of mine? Pause to relax a bit, maybe drink a glass of water, then listen to the captivating content, okay? Comment number 1 if you find this story interesting. Don't forget to hit subscribe to the channel, okay? The package arrives early morning, small, wrapped in brown paper, edges taped carefully, sender's handwriting unfamiliar. Emily picks it up, a strange excitement rising in her chest. Inside, nothing materially valuable, just an old notebook and a short note. The writing on it, "I think you'll need this for the rest of the story." No signature. The notebook wrapped in thin leather, pages yellowed, inside his slanted lines of Harrison's hand. First page, "Write to remember, because memory doesn't exist if not told." Emily turns each page, sees short lines, scattered notes, dates, places, comrades' names, a few short sentences on a soldier's feelings surviving amid the fallen. But later, the writing slows, fades, as if the writer exhausted by his own memories. On the last page, just one line. "If someone reads this, let them know war doesn't end when the guns stop." Emily places the notebook before her, a strange reverence rising. She understands, this is no longer personal material, but the final piece to complete his story, a part he himself never voiced. Bringing the notebook to the museum, Reeves looks at it long. She recognizes the hand, exhales softly, as if witnessing a confession completed. They decide to keep the notebook as is, no edits, no notes, let it speak in time's language. Emily suggests placing it in the new case, beside the photo and letter, not as artifact, but as voice. Reeves agrees. On opening day, more people come than expected. Not just veterans or researchers, but young people, students, families with small children. They pause before the case, read each word, listen to excerpts of Harrison's voice from old records. His voice low, raspy, but warm, telling of fear, loyalty, and his greatest regret, lacking courage to tell loved ones what he saw. Emily stands in a shadowed corner, observing. Each pause brings different reactions, some silent, long, some nodding slightly, some bowing as if saluting. A little boy holding his father's hand asks why that soldier gave back his uniform, and the father replies, perhaps because he wanted it to belong to everyone, not just him. That simple answer chokes Emily. The opening ends with a short speech from the new director. He says amid thousands of displayed artifacts, few hold a story as complete as this uniform, not because it endured fierce battles, but because it journeyed memory's full path. Given away, reclaimed, returned. It's not just one soldier's tale, but for all carrying silent pain. As the crowd thins, An elderly man approaches Emily. He wears a veteran's pin, walks slowly, eyes wet. He says he served in Harrison's unit, once thought he never wanted war mentioned again. Now, seeing the story told, he feels his old friend finally came home. Emily says nothing, just lightly grasps his hand, feels gratitude pass through the trembling palm's warmth. She stays after everyone leaves, only footsteps mingling in the quiet space. She looks at the uniform, photo, letter, notebook, 4 final pieces now together, like a closed circle. Each tells part of the story, and side by side, they form a quiet symphony of memory and redemption. She thinks of him, his years in silence, fear of not being understood, the long journey to dare release, all now no longer in a cold glass case, but alive in each eye that passed. His memory no longer a burden, but a lamp lighting those seeking to forgive themselves. Before leaving, Emily writes a small line in the visitor's notebook, unsigned, just, "When a person tells their story, they're no longer past, they become history." That evening, she gets a message from an unknown number. Just 2 lines. "Thank you for telling what he never dared. I'm the one who sent the notebook. I kept it since 1968, Emily reads, her heart warm yet cold. The sender unnamed, but she knows who only. Carl Brewer still lives, and he chose the final way to return the memory he and her grandfather once shared. She looks out the window, city lights casting soft gold. Somewhere amid endless people, stories like her grandfather's still wait to be told, and she knows her work isn't done. The card from Cedar Hill lies on the table for days, like evidence of something beyond time's borders. Emily doesn't rush to open it, just looks each morning before leaving, like a silent ritual between her and the departed. When she finally opens it, she sees his gravestone photo with engraved words. He found his way home, no sender, but she knows who took it. Brewer, the last remnant of that memory, chose to say goodbye with a picture. She doesn't cry, just feels the chest hollow filled. All this time, she sought him, but perhaps he guided her home not to a place, but to memory's true meaning. She understands what he left isn't a war story, but how a person faces the unforgettable and still finds the way back. The days after, she receives countless letters and messages from strangers. Some say they served in his unit, some lost fathers in war, some just a few lines thanking for showing they're not alone. Each message like a thread linking unknowns into a shared memory community. The museum calls it emotional impact, but to Emily, it's simpler when one dares tell, hundreds find courage to remember. A magazine writes of the exhibit, calling it a dialogue between memory and forgiveness. The article mentions her as a young one daring against forgetting. Emily reads without seeing herself, because she knows the true storyteller is him, just using her to continue. His voice still echoes in the recordings, in each handwritten line, in eyes lingering long before the case. She returns to Cedar Hill at year's end, the small cemetery at town's edge, old soldiers' graves side by side, peaceful. On his stone, a neatly folded letter someone left before her. Inside, just 2 lines. "You kept your promise, so did I." Unsigned, but she knows it's Brewer. That man, after all, completed the final journey. She bows her head, says nothing, because sometimes silence is the deepest respect for those who lived full lives seeking peace. Back in Washington, she stops at the museum. Now, the Harrison exhibit a familiar stop for many, not for heroism, but because it tells what all understand: fear of being forgotten. She sees students note-taking, veterans hand on glass, curious children reading plaques. In that moment, she realizes his true legacy isn't the uniform or letter, but how others find themselves in that story. Once, standing by the case, she hears a boy whisper to his mom, he wants to be a writer, to tell stories like this. His mom smiles, nods. Emily feels lighter, because right then, she knows the seed he planted sprouts in those never meeting him. After the 1-year reopening anniversary, the museum asks her to lead a new project recording untold veteran personal stories. she accepts without hesitation. On each trip, she carries his notebook copy, like a map guiding. Each time sitting to listen, she feels like hearing him same torment, same compassion, same wish to be understood. She no longer tries explaining what war is or how memory works. She just knows every story is part of returning, whether the teller lives or has gone. Harrison found his way home, and so has she. One evening, back at the museum preparing the new exhibit, she stands alone before the case, light reflecting on the clear glass. She looks at the faded uniform, letter, photo, notebook, then smiles faintly, everything back in place, no longer silent artifacts, but living fragments of a soul. She places her hand on the glass, whispers the words he wrote. If you find this, tell it. And she knows, she did. Now, his story belongs not just to past, but to humanity's flow, a reminder courage lies not only on battlefields, but in facing memory. As she leaves, she looks back one last time. In the hazy reflection, she imagines him standing behind, smiling, silent, eyes gentle, as if saying he's at peace. She doesn't turn, no need. What needed hearing, she heard. What needed telling, she told. And from that moment, Emily no longer feels writing of the lost, but writing with one still alive in memory. She understands war doesn't end when guns stop, and memory doesn't die while people remember to tell. Tommy Harrison's story closes not with gunfire, but whispers of generations after. A man who carried war in his heart left his granddaughter the greatest gift, the right to remember, tell, forgive the past. When Emily placed her hand on the case that day, she touched not just an old uniform, but humanity's most enduring part, capacity to love despite wounds, return despite lost. That uniform, letter, notebook, photo, no longer relics. They become proof memory, though painful, can become light. Because ultimately, what Harrison left isn't a soldier's tale, but how he taught us to live with what passed gently, honestly, full of compassion. If you've lost someone, carry an unclosed memory. Remember, the story never truly ends while someone's willing to continue telling. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me about the one you never forget. And if you want the next part, a story of another who stood before that case, carrying their own memory, leave a remember. Because sometimes, the kindest thing for the departed is keeping their memory alive.